birthday, and the Prime Minister looked greatly touched. He was beginning to feel his age, he said. Then he revealed a secret that had been kept from the outside world. I've had 2 strokes. Most people don't know that, but it's a fact. I keep going. Blundell deduced that this accounted for the stiffened handshake at the beginning. Churchill walked him to the exit of the room and then, when Blundell had gone about 5 steps into the hall, wished him goodbye and good luck. This conversation did not mark any great turning point in the history of Kenya. Churchill, just months from retirement, was no longer in a position to be a major influence on colonial policy. Nevertheless, it was highly revealing of his attitudes to race and empire, touching numerous themes that had been present throughout his career. There were so many familiar hallmarks: the gift for a phrase, savages armed with ideas, the recollection of a happier, more innocent past, the emphasis on magnanimity and negotiating from strength. Also familiar was his unashamed belief in white superiority, a conviction which, for him, however, did not lessen the need to act humanely towards supposedly inferior races that might, in their own way, be worthy of admiration. Recognizable as part of this was his opinion that members of these races might earn equal treatment, if not exactly warm acceptance, provided they reached an approved cultural standard. A civilized, educated black man would provoke no feelings in him. Overall, the striking thing is the complexity of his opinions. He emerges from Blundell's account of the discussion as a holder of racist views, but not as an imperial diehard. He comes across in his plea for peace talks as a thoughtful visionary, but also, in his description of the formerly happy, naked Kikuyu, as curiously naive about the realities of imperialism. He was prepared to question the conduct of a dirty colonial war, but was in the end willing to assure its supporters of his backing. Churchill's conversation with Blundell is a good starting point for consideration of his lifelong involvement with the British Empire, and the general attitudes to it from which his specific policies flowed. In order to do this, we need to contend with his reputation, or reputations, on imperial issues. The popular image of him, which draws in particular on his opposition to Indian independence in the 1930s and 1940s, is of a last-ditcher for whom the integrity of the empire was paramount. Yet many of his contemporaries had viewed him differently. As a youthful minister in the colonial office in the Edwardian period, political antagonists had described him as a Little Englander and a danger to the empire. Little Englandism, which today carries connotations of anti-European xenophobia, at the time implied opposition to imperial expansion and to foreign entanglements in general. It was often used as a term of abuse. As late as 1920, even the wild-eyed socialist MP James Maxton would claim disapprovingly that the British Empire was approaching complete disintegration, and that it was not going too far to say that Mr. Churchill had played a primary part in bringing about that state of affairs. Such critics, it should be noted, were not alleging that Churchill was actively hostile to the empire, more that it was not safe in his hands, or that he was comparatively indifferent to it. By the time of Churchill's final term in office, this view was still maintained by a tenacious few. In 1953, the Conservative politician Earl Winterton wrote to Leo Amery, one of Churchill's former wartime colleagues, to congratulate him on the first volume of his Memoirs. He told him, "I am particularly pleased that you have, whilst paying a tribute to Winston's great patriotism, stated, which is indubitably the case, that he has never been an imperialist in the sense that you and I are. We suffered from this point of view during the war, whilst we were in opposition after the war, and are still suffering from it today." Although similar opinions can be found in the historical literature, such contemporary opinions of Churchill need to be treated with some caution. Those who accused him of not caring enough about the empire often meant, underneath, that he did not happen to share their particular view of it. Nor is the conventional image completely misleading. Although during his post-1931 wilderness years Churchill publicly disclaimed the die-hard label, it is clear that he came to revel in it. During the war, the topic of India frequently triggered such extreme reactions in him that he sometimes appeared not quite sane. Nevertheless, this man who could be so disdainful of non-white